Hello YouTube, it's Lion here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another light novel review. Today we're going to be looking at Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. I actually read this last month, but I didn't have time to make a review for it, so here we are. And I also read this digitally, so here's what it looks like. I read this on Bookwalker. I bought it a while back, and I got it for pretty cheap, so that's why I had bought it. And I also had heard that there were some issues with the way 7 Seas translated stuff for Mushoku Tensei, but they have since fixed it. And I didn't want to chance it with the physical edition, so I just bought the digital edition because that would be the newest version. Or at least I thought so, or I think so. So that's how I went about that. And the author here is Rifujin Namagonote, and the artist is Shikotaka, who did a great job with the artwork. It's very, very good. The publisher is 7 Seas, and in terms of demographic, it's male. It doesn't really have a shonen or seinen title to it. However, I don't know what the manga adaptation is, so I'm not gonna speculate about it. In terms of genre, this is an isekai, a harem, and a fantasy story. And I guess it kind of has some gamelet aspects, but not very many of them. And this isekai, as far as I understand it, is one of the early ones in terms of like the modern like isekai style. So, you know, a lot of this stuff that is very common in isekai is based on a lot of stuff that Mushoku Tensei started. So, you know, if you don't like isekai, blame Mushoku Tensei. In terms of adaptations, yes, it has a few. It has an anime, it has a manga, and it has a bunch of spin-off manga as well. And the premise here is that this very shitty 34-year-old NEET and Hikokomori, or whatever it's called, basically dies a pretty shitty death after a pretty shitty life, and is reborn in a fantasy world, and we get to see him grow as he realizes that he has a second chance. He wants to make his life much better than it was before. And I actually really liked it. I understand why a lot of people don't like it, because the 34-year-old NEET character is a pretty shitty character to begin with. But I think that once he turns into Rudius and he begins to understand his situation and try to become better, it is very, very good. It's a very interesting kind of redemption of a character that we didn't really see fall to like bad stuff. He just kind of existed as this, and I think it's really, really good. Like, I hate the characters just as much as anyone else, but when he's Rudius, it makes a lot of sense why people like this. It's a very interesting kind of like look at trying to be better with yourself and with others, and I liked it a lot. I thought it was really, really well done. So overall, I really, really enjoyed Mushoku Tensei. I definitely want to buy more of it. In terms of plotline, I think it's great. It mostly feels like a fantasy slice of life, because more or less it is a fantasy slice of life for the majority of this first volume. We get to see a bit of an extended prologue where we get to see this 34-year-old character who is a horrible person, and then his parents die, so now he has no one to take care of him, and so now he lives a shitty life for a few days when his siblings kick him out of their house. And then we get a very quick isekai, you know, truck-kun situation. No goddess or anything like that. He just gets reincarnated. And then we get to see his rebirth and his acclimation to this new fantasy world, where he learns that it's basically, you know, very magical, and there's a certain level of like, what's it called, like gamelet aspects. It's not very clearly a gamelet. It's mostly a kind of like nebulous fantasy kind of system. And then he starts to grow. He finally gets some lessons with this character Roxy, who's very cute, and then he becomes friends with this young character called Sophie. And then he gets sword lessons, and then he goes off to a different city at the end of the volume in order to develop as an individual. And I really, really enjoyed it. It doesn't feel like it's very important or very much happened in the story. And, you know, you might think so, but the kind of character exploration was really, really great. Overall, I think that the characterization was probably the most interesting, because the plotline is directly linked to the growth of character of Rudius, right? So very, very interesting. In terms of characters, we have Rudius, or Rudy, who is the main character. He was a NEET, now he's mostly a good guy. He is still a little bit lecherous, and kind of perverted. But he is more or less a good person, a mostly good person. And then we get to see his parents, his father Paul, who embodies some of the issues that Rudy had with his previous life, but also embodies some things that he's aiming to be. And it's a very interesting character. He's a pretty shitty guy, all told. There's this situation that happens that is kind of alluded to and then kind of like dropped, and it's like, it's fine. Overall, he's a good person, which I didn't really like. He basically raped a character who then becomes like his second wife, as far as I'm aware, which would be Lilia. And it's pretty shitty, and they kind of do gloss over it, and I didn't really like that aspect of the story. That is probably the only major complaint I have with this story, that they didn't really treat Paul as a worse character than he is. But eventually they do kind of admit, hey, he's bad, but now he's trying to be better, and so it's, not okay necessarily, but, they kind of move on from it. And of course, his mother Zenith, and he lives with these three adults, and he's a young man. And then we get introduced to Roxy and Sylph. Roxy is a wizard lady, and she's some sort of like hobbit type character. Well, she's not really a hobbit, but she's kind of like, I don't know, some sort of magical person. She's not a human. And then Sylphie, who is a half elf, I think, if I remember correctly. And it's a very interesting kind of way that they interact with these characters. And then he gets shipped off at the end, so we're going to see new characters later on, which I think is cool. But yeah, everything is great. Even Paul, as shitty as he is of a character, is made very understandably, I guess. Like, the way everyone is created and talked about is very, very good. I really liked it. In terms of world building, it's a very general sword and sorcery type world, as in there's sword fighting and sorcery. However, it is not a sword and sorcery world in the Conan the Barbarian type of style that you would think of when you think of sword and sorcery here in a Western kind of setting, right? So, be aware of that. It's not exactly like that. It's more like a medieval turning into Renaissance type of situation, which is cool. There's major magic and sword powers, and they basically seem to be the same thing, but with different ways of interacting with the world. And then there's this kind of situation where everyone just lives out in the boonies, or at least everyone that Rudy is around lives out in the boonies, and eventually they have to make their way to the big city eventually. And the world building is relatively weak. There isn't too much to it so far, but everything else about the story really carries it, so it doesn't really bother me that there isn't that much world building, honestly. In terms of art, it's pretty good. I really like the colored illustrations. The black and white illustrations are more or less okay, but overall I think that Shirotaka did quite a good job with the art style and the way that everything is drawn. I quite liked it. And in terms of fan service, there's no art, there's no illustrations that are fan servicey in and of themselves, but there's a good enough amount of naughty material in the sense that, like, you get to see Rudius take someone's panties, and you get to see Paul and his wife and Lilia interacting, and you get to see, stuff like that. And it's not really like hyper sexual or anything like that. It is more or less a very kind of just general, like, fade to black kind of situation with some of that, classic ecchi Japanese humor that a lot of people don't like, and it's totally understandable if they don't like it. I don't really care for it that much, but I don't really dislike it either. It's just kind of like there. And of course, like I said, there are some concerning stuff that some people would consider fan service, some people would not. I don't consider it fan service. I think it's actually pretty concerning and bad, but it is part of the characterization of the character. I can't get mad at like things like that because, there's a lot of epic fantasy, grimdark fantasy that has a lot of these same things. And of course, they are treated a bit more seriously than they are here in this novel, but, they do feature it, so it's not anything crazy or horrible to see in media, or at least in my opinion, because at the end of the day, it is fiction. It's not actually happening, even if it does happen in real life, I guess. In the context of reading a novel, it doesn't really matter. It's fine. It can be as shitty or as good as it wants to be, and it's fine. At least that's my opinion on it. I know a lot of people might have different opinions, and that's totally fine. Now, in terms of rating, I would give this a 4 out of 5. I really don't like how they handled Paul, but other than that, everything else was pretty great. So I can't really complain too much. A 4 or 4.5 out of 5. It is almost a perfect novel. I really loved it. I read it in like 3 hours. I just started reading it on a whim. And then I just couldn't put it down, so I had to stay up until like 4 in the morning to read it. And I liked it a lot. It was great. I really, really did enjoy it. And in terms of recommendations, or in terms of me recommending it, I definitely recommend that you do read it. And in terms of what type of titles I think you would like if you like Mushoku Tensei, basically any modern isekai is going to be very similar to Mushoku Tensei, because this is kind of like the seminal text in these modern reincarnation into a fantasy world type of series. So you'll probably enjoy quite a lot of them. Maybe don't read the ones that are like reincarnated as a monster, because those don't really have much to do with Mushoku Tensei, because the system or the kind of storyline is slightly different, since they are not dealing with a human character. But you know, isekai of that nature are going to be very, very similar, and you'll probably enjoy them if you like Mushoku Tensei. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you guys think about Mushoku Tensei. Do you guys like it? Do you guys hate it? Do you guys just think it is whatever? Do you guys really love it, or do you not like it at all? Let me know down in the comments. I am pretty curious, because I see a lot of people hate the series, and I see a lot of people love the series, and I'm very much strongly in the love camp of things. At least from the first volume. Maybe in the second volume I changed my mind, but it is a very interesting series, and I really like the characterization of the characters, even if they are not good people, because it's just written so well. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you guys later.